treat their studies more like a 9 to 5. Work hard during sort of your work hours, but then take the time to switch off, have the weekends, and that way you could recover, recharge, and then come back again stronger the next week.
To stay connected with the network of people that you have at your disposal at university, starting from your students to lecturers, all the support staff, because that will be a network you'll keep coming back to. You can also build your network, you mentioned earlier, through societies and through sports and whatever hobbies. And in terms of what you're studying now, what you're passionate about, don't be so set on of thinking you're going to be doing that forever, because sometimes you'll make changes consciously yourself and other times those changes will just be presented to you as we touched on. So have a flexible mindset about where your career might end up, obviously with a positive outcome.
Welcome to the Engineer Career Podcast, Ivona and Ondrej. How you doing?
Yeah, doing very well.
You good?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming onto a live podcast in the University of Edinburgh, your home university. It must feel nice coming back now as professionals as opposed to students. How is it? How does it feel?
Yeah, it feels good. I've been to the university for some events in the past, so I've done some careers fairs and stuff. So I do pop in maybe once a year, once every 6 months. So, but I always like come back and get a kind of smile on my face because the good memories that I've had here.
Yeah. What were you, Ivona?
Very similar. Every time I'm here, you kind of feel like there's a part of you that is still here, but you also see all the new things and just enjoy meeting members of staff, students, and seeing the impressive facilities that we're in today.
Definitely, we've already went through a full chat about how good the facilities are and how they've changed. It's always a sign of the times when you go back to your home university and you see how much the campus has changed over time. So how this works is we're going to explore both of your careers, which is exciting because you both studied here at the university. We'll start off with what sparked your interest into engineering, where it all came from, and we'll go through your career from what you studied, the companies you've worked for, the projects you've worked on, and then finish off with what keeps you passionate about engineering. And the purpose of engineer careers is for you to humanise engineering and for students to be able to listen in and hear that your journey may not look as simple as the job title that you have now, and that you also had hurdles and challenges that you faced, and that you can give the energy and advice to students that they crave when they're looking to kickstart their career. So Ivona, I'm going to start with you then. What sparked your interest in engineering?
I think it all comes down to like creating something useful, something that enhances, life of a person in, whatever way you look at it. That stayed with me throughout the career. So when I was in school, I really enjoyed science, probably very similar to everybody who works in engineering. But I wanted to make sure that it's like converted into something useful and tangible. So yeah, that's kind of why I opted for engineering, even though I still have a lot of passion for pure science. Second part of that is that a lot of people that I studied with have somebody else in their family who's an engineer. And actually, like a really interesting remark is that all of the girls who studied engineering at the same time as us, all of us had fathers who were engineers. So maybe it was like a silent bit of influence that we didn't notice. But it wasn't something that, in all of our cases, anyone's pushed on us. So maybe just, being surrounded by people you can look up to in that way played a part in my interest in engineering.
I love it. Yeah, it seems to be quite common, even away from engineering, that a parent's career can influence your own career path, which is good in one hand, but then I wonder if we're losing lots of potential engineers who don't have a parent that do engineering.
I think I'm more aware of that now that I'm, that we're doing this older, because at the time I just didn't really think about it. It was just something that, like in this case, my dad did. But that sort of access and an understanding of career paths, that is, I now realise that I was privileged in that way, but as a kid I didn't really realise or appreciate it enough at the time.
What about you, Ondrej? What sparked your interest in engineering?
So one of my earliest, engineering memories is coming down for a day trip to Edinburgh, and they're just randomly at the National Museum of Scotland. They were hosting a Christmas workshop where you got to solder together a flashing Santa toy, basically. And that's kind of my first sort of engineering kind of memory, putting something like that together. Although I do think that my dad had a much better time playing with the solder kit, joining the electrical connections than me. I think he got to use his kind of like electronics and electrical engineering degree. But that was kind of my sort of first sort of like, bit of, I guess, introduction to engineering. And then kind of going into sort of high school, like I was quite good at maths and physics. Really enjoyed those sort of subjects, one of my sort of favourite subjects at school. But then I kind of realised that the sort of the pure physics and the pure maths just wasn't for me. I wasn't smart enough to just do kind of like theoretical maths. So I kind of twisted to sort of engineering as a kind of alternative career. And I came to the Edinburgh University Open Day back in 2012 and really liked the sort of facilities, and that was kind of what wanted me to study sort of engineering here. There was a bit of a doubt in my mind at the time, having to walk from Central Campus to King's Buildings. So for those who don't know Edinburgh, that's like a 45-minute walk. Did not want to do that there and back every day. So I almost switched to economics for that reason alone. But I'm glad I didn't, and I'm glad I pursued with engineering.
You're starting to sound like me here. When we had our summer sessions here and Catherine and I were looking for a room, I was trying to suggest all the rooms that were in the middle of Edinburgh rather than in this campus. So I'm glad I don't feel as guilty now. So talk me through your time here at the university then Ondrej. So you studied mechanical engineering. Talk us through what your studies in the course.
Yeah, so I studied the Masters in Engineering here, Mechanical Engineering with Management. So sort of the first sort of 4 years or so is kind of your standard engineering modules. So I did like the fluid mechanics, thermodynamics, structural dynamics, and all those sort of courses. But in my sort of fifth year, I kind of got the option to do some electives. And as part of that, I chose fire science and then fire safety engineering. And those two courses were the ones that really kind of sparked my passion into a career in fire engineering. A lot of that is to one of the lecturers here at Edinburgh University, Dr. Ricky Carvel, who's kind of like passionate lecturing style, and just the passion for the subject of fire science kind of ignited me to want to pursue that.
Yeah. So did you come into university, I guess, with the kind of wide... I always kind of speak to this with students, is like you start university with the kind of funnel quite wide, and then you kind of home in as you start to get experience, whether it be through your actual course or whether it's through events or through people you meet. So I guess it was more the course and then the lectures in particular that kind of managed to bring you into that niche area.
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't know what to really expect, because when you're like 17, 18, coming to university for the first time, you don't really know what engineers do. And I think definitely like maybe like in my mind, it was totally different from like what it is in a practice.
That's interesting. What about yourself, Ivona? That was a similar kind of situation for you?
It is similar. So I studied Masters of Engineering as well here in Edinburgh, electronics and electrical. A little bit like Ondrej, I had like a rough idea of what it might be like, but then it changed and was different, and it was kind of for the better. I realised that all the courses that they're teaching us is helping us prepare for both practical and theoretical. So I really enjoyed the labs that we had. And so I did enjoy soldering and all that. I don't do any of that today, but I'm having a really nice trip down memory lane here. I in the fourth and fifth year, I did an industrial placement, but prior to that, I worked in the summer placements with the same company, so I already had a little bit of insight. What's it like working in engineering? And it was actually a company that it no longer exists, but it was called National Semiconductor, but it had both fabrication and design. So I think it was really good to get a chance to see how things are made and how operations in a business work, and then also how kind of technology is designed and developed before it goes into fabrication. Really enjoyed the time here. Also took the 42 bus from centre of town to here. That probably doesn't run the same route. And yeah, memories of like time at universities are brilliant. Met some lifelong friends that I still keep in touch with, whether they live locally or not. And we had excellent support at uni. Couldn't just go and like name all the lecturers. I'll forget somebody, but in particular, my director of studies, Robin Wallace, was fantastic influence and support on me during university.
And what were the kind of topics or classes, courses within your degree that you began to focus in on when you were during your studies? So
I really enjoyed maths, right? But from the engineering courses, it was analog design, it was what is called signals and systems. But to be honest, I enjoyed all of it. Something that I didn't enjoy as much of, which is very funny when you know what I do now, is that I like the hardware and the hands-on stuff a lot more than software. These days I find myself managing very talented and much smarter software people than I would be. But yeah.
You mentioned as well about the placements and summer work or internships that you completed. Looking back now, what was the main benefits that you think that you took from those experiences? Because we know students are always keen to get work experience, and how important it is to familiarise yourself with industry and both an engineering environment and those who work with it. So what did you take from those experiences?
I think there's kind of two threads. One is like the technical knowledge and benefits, and the other one is just the business and the business environment. So from technical side, I realised how much more we've got to learn compared to the excellent base that we get at uni to apply it in context of a particular problem, particular product. Like my master's engineering project was design of a battery charging circuit. And so I just realised that it takes a bit more than the power systems equations to electronics to do that. So I felt like a really big learning ramp, but one that was very enjoyable. On the other side is just understanding what's it like going into an office. I'm aware these days the ways of working are different, but going into an office, meeting the people, understanding what everyone does, because you're not just working with engineers and not just working with people that have similar amount of experience than you. You're working with other people who do testing, who do, applications, customer facing. You're dealing with office staff, with experts in, all the business side of things, finance, HR. And I don't think that's quite as obvious, or at least it wasn't to me when I was a student, that all of that is needed to make a business run well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good perspective as well, and that those two threads, and you realise that when you start to go into industry, if it's for a placement or once you get your first job role. Ondrej, what about you? Did you get any work placements, internships while you were studying before you essentially graduated and got your first job?
Yes, so I did a 6-month internship as part of the degree in malt distilling. I really enjoyed that there. So it was basically making Scotch whiskey. Pretty fantastic internship to do. The thing I didn't like about it was the location. So it's like North Scotland. I was there by myself, had nothing to do, but it was a great internship, and definitely learned quite a lot just from those that sort of 6 months. And a lot of this was really like people and how a business operates, rather than sort of the technical aspects. And I think that's like the main bit of, I think, internships and the value you get. Understanding the relationships, understanding like who needs to know what when, and understanding like what to say, when to not say something, and like being in that type of environment, thought was really useful to then kind of ignite my career in post-graduation. Yeah,
exactly. So those interpersonal skills and when you're using them and everything associated with that. And I guess what's important is, and I've spoken about this in the podcast a lot, students who sometimes don't get an internship or maybe get access to industry late on, you are still using these skills in other environments. And here at the University of Edinburgh, no shortage of societies and different initiatives that you can get involved in, which draw out those interpersonal skills, whether it be working with others or working to deadlines or to certain quality requirements. So has there been a standout moment if you think back to university? What was your standout moment being here, Ondrej?
Well, I'll probably say the time off, I think, in the summer, right? I look back on this all the time, because now I get like 25 days annual leave and bank holidays. I will never get like 4 months off every summer. So that is like my fondest memory. But like I always tried to do stuff. So whether it was traveling, whether it was spending time with friends, whether it was getting like a part-time job. But I kind of like that you were able to kind of do stuff and maybe pursue other personal interests. Because once I then started my career, it's kind of difficult to focus on like side projects, maybe side learning, or if you've got an interest in, I don't know, learning a new skill somewhere, going abroad, it kind of becomes a bit more difficult. And living that student experience was definitely a highlight for me.
Absolutely, and I'm going to plug here an article I wrote called "The Pressure Cooker of Capability," and it's all about students using the time they've got to develop skills. And okay, your example was not, I guess, specific to the University of Edinburgh, but it's a reflection on being at university. And I think it's really, really important. And it's easy for us three to step back and think back to university and go, there's opportunities to develop this or do this. And it's invaluable advice, because it's those times where you find out more about yourself and where you want to go. So I think that's really good bit of advice in there.
Yeah. And even then, like one summer I was like working in a restaurant, and even the experiences that I got, them like working with different people against deadlines, time pressure, and dealing with all that maybe like work stress and all that you could then take that and apply it in like then a more professional setting. So even that, you're developing yourself and developing your skills.
Great advice. What about you, Ivona, as a standout memory from the university?
As Ondrej was speaking, I was just thinking, there's so many points. Like I remember this particular lab called the Satvey lab. I don't know if it's still done or not, but yeah, it was just such great fun, because whether you knew what you were doing, whether you were able to follow instructions, whether you were completely stuck or not, there was a group of people there. Everyone was working individual projects. The lecturers were there. They would obviously come on rotation when we're there, and the amazing staff that run the lab. And just the thing that we were doing was essentially like designing a board that would like interface with the oscilloscope, and it would play back. It would look like probably right now like a very old-fashioned TV, but play back what was on TV, and so we always wanted to make sure that it's set up on a music channel and all the different songs were blasting. And but no, it was just a great thing, because I think it's creating something real, but everyone learning alongside it. Also linked to the labs, not just that one, but other ones, we were all asked to like keep a very record in the lab books, which was also like probably at the time a bit of pressure, or a lab book's going to be ordered. But that's been so useful since, just being organised, knowing what to do, when to do. Now we use a whole variety of digital tools to do that, but it goes back to writing all that stuff in the lab book. And I already touched on that kind of camaraderie and good support from lecturers, but lots of other examples of that. There was like a fifth-year module when we had to do something that's kind of in practical application engineering. I forget the name of it, but it was also everyone just like throwing ideas and having those brainstorms. That happens all the time at work. And those were kind of my first memories of doing it, and doing it with people that I knew really well.
I love that. It's nice reflections, I guess. And not many people have mentioned to me on the podcast around the note taking or the lab books, but you've covered such a powerful point around organisation, and you learn it at university. If you don't learn it at university, then you've got a steep learning curve when you go into industry. So it's amazing, reflecting on that and seeing how valuable that skill set is now, certainly within your profession and the roles that you've had. So sticking with that, and we'll go straight to today. You're senior technical manager at Canon. Talk us about your role and what you're involved in. Go for it. The floor's yours.
So I work for Canon Medical. The kind of local company is called Canon Medical Research Europe, but it's part of a global organisation and headquartered in Japan, and it's called Canon Medical Systems Corporation. The difference is that in the headquarters in Japan, that's where the manufacturing of CT scanners, all the design of them, MRI scanners, ultrasound, interventional devices happens. Here in Edinburgh, we create software components that either like enable and power the scanners in technology sense, or things that are used for post-processing. To do that, you need people of different backgrounds and skills. So engineers, a variety of backgrounds, some computer science, some come from Triple E backgrounds, for example. Lots of scientists, people who have either maths or physics background, and clinical specialists, because it's all obviously for clinical use. So what I do, I manage a group that's called AI Centre of Excellence, but has multiple teams working on either software linked to image analysis, visualization, multimodal analytics, and we have some research in bioinformatics. So that means I'm surrounded by a lot of people who are experts in those areas and learning alongside all of them, and just helping to make sure that the work that we do ends up in a scanner or a product somewhere where it can help the clinician and ultimately patients, which makes the work that we do and anything that we do very meaningful.
And obviously across your career, you've evolved from engineering to design, and then all the way up to the senior role you've got now. What reflecting on that, because I guess, and I mentioned at the very start, when you're university and you're graduate and you're looking for that first role, it can be quite daunting to see some of the senior role positions LinkedIn's a perfect example. The glossy pictures and the fancy job titles, as I always say. Reflecting on your role now as a student, what's been the kind of key moments in your career that's helped you evolve from that that graduate engineer all the way up to now the position you're in?
I think some of it is organic and some of it is you sort of get directed by other people on the way to see if it helps you. I mean, if you asked me when I was a student, I would think that I was speaking to Catherine here from University of Edinburgh earlier. I thought I was going to be a designer for life. Like, I had no other plan. Like, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be technical. But over time, it's that ability to maybe also work cross-functionally, or technical and other skills kind of joining, where I got asked to lead projects and to manage some projects, and obviously now in latter years managing teams, that I realised that actually you can use your technical skills in a different way. So they were a couple of changing points. I worked for many years as a analog IC designer, integrated circuit designer. Then I moved more into a chip lead role, where actually you're working with people with lots of other backgrounds, specialties like verification and digital. You have you're just aware about it, but you're not really the expert, but you're meant to still like kind of help pull it all together. So actually, regardless of what you do, listening to the people that know the skill and then making good judgment on it is always better than trying to wing it. So I did that for a while, and then that company got sort of taken over by its competitor, which then meant that different types of work had to be done in context of how the companies would be working together, methodologies and processes. And so that kind of evolved more into some product owner roles for design automation, which is how I slowly gravitated to the world of software, and I'm now at Canon. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. But there's basically been points where I couldn't have foreseen that they would happen, but they've changed. That evolved. But I'm really pleased where it all ended up.
Yeah. So I mean, like any question I ask, don't worry, there's not a right or wrong answer. I just prod and see what comes out. But I think what's really interesting, the point you've made there, is you can control certain moves in your career and also where you think you want to go to. But like you said, the experience and companies either maybe changing hands, merging with others. Unfortunately, some dissolve. That happens, and your career essentially will make its own moves as well. So it's really interesting and also very beneficial to hear that you've kind of continued to evolve your career well and snake through those different challenges that appear, the ones that you can't plan for. So what's you, Ondrej, what about your role? You're at Stantec now, and you're a discipline lead. So fire engineering is your world. Talk to us about your company and also your role there.
Yeah, of course. So as sort of the regional discipline lead at Stantec, so I look after the fire engineering team in Scotland. So I've got about 10 engineers who report into me. And basically my job is to basically manage that sort of team. So I think my role kind of fits into three parts. One is sort of the people management. So engaging with people, making sure that my team's happy, doing sort of their appraisals, making sure they've got enough work, that the work that they get is interesting and engaging. I also look at after sort of like complex projects, so I'll be more of like an independent advisor on some projects. So if someone's got a sort of technical issue, I could sort of give like opinions and advice on how to deal with that. And sort of the third pillar of my role is the business development and the clients aspects of that. So my job is to be quite client facing. So I'd go out and speak to clients, meet clients in person, speak to them on the phone, to sort of win work for my team. And sort of sell our services. The type of services that we do is consultancy. So what we do is we help architects, we help developers, we help contractors develop safe and compliant buildings that satisfy all the legislative requirements and meet the sort of the functional requirements of the building regulations.
It's interesting, and I'm guessing you still, despite your kind of more senior role, you're still quite heavily involved in the technical output of the team and the specifications that come along with fire engineering.
I think less and less. My job's more like now spreadsheet focused and like graph focused rather than the sort of more technical focused, and sort of more managing that technical output, making sure that processes are followed, because we've got lots of accreditations for like ISO 9001, ISO 14001, so making sure like our documents are correctly filed, we follow all the correct quality assurance processes. rather than sort of the more technical role.
Yeah, and it seems like in a short space of time from leaving university to now being quite a senior role, what do you think the key moments have been in your career so far that's helped you get to where you've got to?
I think it's the people that mentored me, especially through my graduate scheme and my early years careers. They're both my sort of chartered engineer references. So Stephen Dixon and Stuart Dabin, they both kind of helped me with, I guess, a lot of the soft skills. There's a lot of, I think, business is a lot on soft skills and learn to navigate sort of the political landscape of companies and how to deal with sort of different people and making sure you get the best out of people. Their support and their leadership really helped me sort of get into that sort of position. And I also think maybe it's kind of my personality type. Kind of happy to kind of talk to clients, happy to pick up the phone, happy to just go to an event and start chatting for a few hours, So
now you know why you're on the podcast.
Which and those kind of skill sets kind of suited me for the role. And now going to work is not. I don't dread going to work on a Monday. I kind of enjoy it, and that makes work go so much easier. So I would give that advice to students. Focus on what you really enjoy, and find a job that you really like. You don't need to chase promotions and go into management if you don't have zero interest in management, because your 9 to 5 is going to be miserable, and you've got to do that till you're 65 or something. It's not the way to live your life.
I echo that. So it's find your passion and you'll find your purpose. It's the kind of mix between the two. And I guess with you've found it within fire engineering and the navigation throughout your career that's got you to this position. So you mentioned chartership, which is a big chartership or professional registration and qualification, whether it be EngTech, iEng or CEng, is something that a lot of engineers value throughout their career. What was your process from graduating to becoming chartered? What did you follow to achieve that?
So I focused a lot of my sort of development using the UK spec. So that's defined by the Engineering Council on what a chartered engineer should kind of achieve. And kind of every year, every 6 months, I sort of set goals at what to achieve or what to do in the next 6 months to take a few things off. So there's 17 competencies under the UK spec. So basically maybe every 6 months focus on 1 or 2 and really try and develop in those, set myself goals and also try and get projects and experiences to be able to hit them. So a lot of it was quite self-driven. I think for getting chartership, it has to be quite self-driven, but also having that support from sort of my sort of senior leadership team at the time. I've only been chartered for about 6 months, so it's still quite new to me. But
still chartered. Well, but still being chartered, because I'm not. I don't ever like saying that everyone has to become chartered, but you set a goal in your career and you go achieve it. I think professional registration with the Engineering Council is something that all engineers should consider, whether as I mentioned there, whether it be EngTech, iEng, CEng, because it, like you said, getting out the UK spec, seeing the competencies and essentially spending the time for your own personal development to tick them off. I'm maybe not the only one that thinks this, but it comes down to your professional review each year. The UK spec can be the basis for that for the first X number of years in your career, without you having to go and do your own research. It's you print it off and you check through it. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Ivona, what over to yourself? Any professional goals you've had in your career or achievements that stand out so far?
Great question. I also really love hearing about your story. You mentioned mentors. So mentors played and are playing a big role in what I do, because just sometimes understanding what is it that you could do differently, and also what to focus on for the next bit. So like I mentioned that, I went from being a designer and a chip lead to product owner, but I was still officially called like a design engineer because that's like the in-house job title. But I went and got qualification and product ownership in order to understand that a little bit deeper, and then got to apply that for a few years practically. But now actually can like understand what the product owners or the team leads in my teams are doing because of that. So there's always that now in the work that I'm doing just now, understanding more about the medical domain, understanding about the customer needs. It's a very different world than semiconductor industry, so there's a lot to learn there, and I'm just really grateful that we've got good setup like in the company with training resources, but also the team members, especially those with clinical background, who I can contact and discuss these things. That's like from a technical industry domain, so I think that happens throughout. But you mentioned also people skills, and I laughed when you said spreadsheets, but people skills in spreadsheets are every manager is kind of centered around those. It's just continuously developing those people skills. So whether it's going to early years to management essentials or equivalent courses, now working more in kind of like strategic management, understanding more business operations and things like that. So there's different things that you pick up at different times, and all of those courses were valuable and keep being valuable. So I don't have a charter qualification like you do, but a kind of set of courses and collections of things. Like obviously work in AI, I did a course in AI ethics a couple of years ago just to understand the basis, because we'll all have our personal views and understanding. So continued development and investing in your own skills is important.
It's invaluable, and worthy advice for students as well. You mentioned role models and mentors, and it's always reassuring to hear engineers talk about those that have supported them in their career, because ultimately when you're a student you want to be able to have that support network, and it's good to hear that both of you have had that support throughout your career. So sticking with you, Ivona, has there been any projects that you've worked on across your career that stand out, either through your direct involvement in or indirect involvement in, that you saw and enjoyed watching it develop over time?
Mm-hmm. So I would say in maybe the first half of my career, seeing any chip come to life in the lab or inside a device or in set of headphones or a phone is always that great feeling. It's like we made that, we being the larger team of many people with different skills. I particularly like testing the very first chip when it came back during actually the student placement. But following on from that, it's when the projects don't go as planned, either because of business changes, like I mentioned, obviously company changing, or when there's just priorities, understanding how you didn't take that knowledge and take it into the next project. Because at the time, it can be really disheartening. It can be tough, and I won't pretend that it's easy. But there were projects where we would work the team for 18 months and just be ready to go to production, and then for business reasons, actually, that's no longer the right thing to do because something else takes priority. That work doesn't just go in the bin. That work then materializes in the next chip or the knowledge that we've got, and these things happen for a business reason. So I think learning that was important. And then more recently, working at Canon, seeing any of our technology go all the way to product is always such a great feeling because it's going to make a real difference to somebody in a medical setting. And it's just that you mentioned passion and purpose, finding purpose in work we do is so important.
That's amazing to hear. What about yourself, Ondrej? Any project you've worked on that stands out across your career so far?
Probably my most standout one is the Jenner's redevelopment in Edinburgh. So mainly because it's local, but also is a very important building to not just Edinburgh, but Scotland as a whole. So the building dates back to about 1895, and it's Category A listed, and over the years it just fell into disrepair. It was a 7-storey shopping centre, and as consumer habits changed over the years, there wasn't really a business case for a 7-storey shopping centre anymore. So maintenance fell down and it got reduced, and eventually the shop closed. And then just before the pandemic, there was basically an investment to refurb it into something new and give it that new life. So as part of that project team who led that, to develop the sort of fire strategy for that. So one, because it is kind of like an icon in Edinburgh, and it was right next to the office. It was kind of like nice to look at it every day on my way to work, which is always good to see that sort of progress. But also sort of saving a historical asset from falling into disrepair to be used again. So instead of it being a 7-story shopping centre, the shopping centre is going to be only on the lower floors, and the upper floors are going to be redeveloped to like restaurants and hotel. So giving a sort of new commercial sort of life to that building. And as well, during the sort of strip out of it, we found some features that we thought were lost for good. So in the 1960s and 70s, people weren't that bothered about historic preservation. So all the sort of ornate ceilings were just boarded up or covered with sort of false ceilings. But during the strip out, we kind of found them again. That needed some like complex sort of structural analysis and structural fire engineering analysis to make sure that those ceilings were safe and could meet the sort of life safety goals of the building. So getting to work on something like that and saving a ceiling that everyone thought was long gone and destroyed, felt really, really, really good. And as well saving that sort of building from sort of disrepair. So it's currently under construction. So I think it opens in about 12 months' time or something like that. So really looking forward to maybe going for lunch or dinner in the building I helped design. Really looking forward to that.
Sounds like you've got a real attachment to it, and it will be something that's local and nice to see that you've had that contributing factor in that. So across your career so far, have you had any moments where there's been a challenge or a setback that when you reflect back on it now, you think that's how I overcame it, and I'm glad I went round it this way, or such? In
our industry, we have to sort of negotiate with approval authorities and sort of the fire service and sort of a lot of other stakeholders. So sometimes, you do a brilliant design and then the client rejects it. And that's never a great feeling because, you spent hours and hours building a design and then, I don't like it. It's not a great feeling. But presenting why you've made those decisions and why the design is a solid design and addressing their concerns with it and, presenting yes, we value your input here, but we've done it this way because of some other reasons, and being able to showcase the sort of strong engineering that we've done to make that building possible is always quite a nice feeling.
What about yourself, Ivona? Any setbacks that you reflect on now and think, I'm glad I overcame that, or this is how I managed that situation?
There have been plenty of setbacks, but I don't mean that in some negative sense. It's just because they happen, and we learn from all of them. I'll kind of pick out two because they're slightly different. One of the first chip designs that I led came back from manufacture. And by the way, I worked I didn't mention earlier, for a company called Wolfson Microelectronics, which then became Cirrus Logic, also based locally in Edinburgh, and always want to support all good local employers. So Canon Medical is where I'm at. They're fantastic, and Cirrus Logic is also great for anyone looking to have an engineering career. So while I was at Wolfson, we were working on a audio codec. It came back from fabrication after many months spent designing it, with the whole team. It came back and we were testing, and tests are going okay. And then one of really important interface parts wasn't working, which meant that we couldn't test the rest. So it's kind of like a blocker for sorting out everything. And there's a really important bioelectronics manufacturer waiting for samples. And I just remember the sort of pressure that we felt to debug that. But for me, it was the first time being in it. For my senior colleagues, including my mentor, who was absolutely fantastic at the time, my mentor in that company, we just kept debugging until we got it. And then when we got it, it was actually something really simple. As in, it's simple and you have that facepalm moment of this happened, but it was simple to fix. That kind of whole roller coaster of technical debug, understanding, keeping the stakeholders updated and in the end, even though it was an issue, it was an issue that we could fix. And I keep remembering that, not in some big triggering way, but in a good way. Anytime that there is we don't really know what's going on, what are we debugging? Whichever company I'm at, I kind of think, might not be as complicated, and always look for those simple mistakes. So that's that one. And the other ones are more like kind of linked about building. This isn't like a particular setback, but a general point I want to make. Building relationships and getting to know people when you change roles or when your role changes because of business needs. So I made this sort of pretty big change for myself and going from consumer electronics to medical. And I got interviewed just a few weeks before lockdown. I didn't know everything's going to get locked down. So I found myself at home in 2020 going, I'm about to start a job, I'm about to manage people, and I'm just looking at a screen. It felt terrifying. It's worked out brilliantly, but I could have backtracked. I could have not. I don't mean from the company, but I could have backtracked before making that decision and kind of feel, should I be making this? But the whole world was changing, so I just went with it and changed the rest. Things have obviously worked out well for everyone. Worked out after the pandemic, as in things have reopened and we can go into the offices. But yeah, I had to do a lot of that, getting to know people while they're a square on the screen. So not a setback, but you can understand how it was quite challenging at the time.
Yeah, I mean, resilience for both of you in your situations are important, and that kind of long-term thinking, which something, in particular in your case there, Ivona, hopefully when things will normalise again, and then you then can meet up with your team quite easily not to think that way, and not to see it either, given the circumstances at the time. What advice would you give to a student who is either in first year, leaving university? What advice would you give to a younger Ivona?
Advice I would give is really to stay connected with the network of people that you have at your disposal at university, starting from your students to lecturers or the support staff, because that will be a network you'll keep coming back to, and it will help you in tough times. And I really mean that in a good way. Like, people can always help each other at people level, but from a professional standpoint, recommending a company, understanding what it's like to work in a company is always much easier to get than when you're just reading about it on a website. So keep building your network. You can also build your network, you mentioned earlier, through societies and through sports and whatever hobbies. I think that's also something I would recommend. That's like from a network building and future looking. And in terms of what you're studying now, what you're passionate about, don't be so set on of thinking you're going to be doing that forever, because sometimes you'll make changes consciously yourself, and other times those changes will just be presented to you, as we touched on. So have a flexible mindset about where your career might end up, obviously with a positive outcome.
Love it. Over to you, Ondrej. What advice would you give to a younger version of yourself?
Yeah, so I think this kind of advice, I think mainly for people while they're still at university, is to treat their studies more like a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And really, when you're doing your studies, turn up at 9, work hard till 5, and then log off and switch off and do something else. Definitely when I was at university, people loved doing stuff all-nighters or working into ridiculous hours of the night. And that way, students, you just burn yourself out. And then, or the work that you're going to do at 3 a.m. is not going to be of any quality or that's useful. And then the next day, are you going to be productive after doing an all-nighter? Probably not. So really, when you're doing your studies, plan out what you need to do, and work hard during sort of your work hours, but then take the time to switch off, have the weekends, and that way you could recover, recharge, and then come back again stronger the next week.
Yeah, I love it. That's invaluable advice. So we've came to the final question. Thank you both so much for joining me on the podcast. It's always special to do a live podcast in a university, and in particular when you've got two alumni from the university you're in. So thank you for joining me. So I'll start with yourself, Ivona. What keeps you passionate about engineering?
I think it's the same thing as I said at the start. Seeing something come to life, seeing a product, seeing a bit of technology, seeing its use, but knowing that's come from the work of many people together.
Love it. Ondrej, final to you.
And for me, it's solving problems. It doesn't matter what they are, whether technical or not. It's overcoming a challenge, solving a problem, and making sure that the people are happy. I'm quite a people-focused person, and making sure that the team's happy, the problem's solved, and that kind of makes my day.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for joining me. I know that the advice and reflections that you've both made across your careers can be invaluable for students looking to pursue their careers over the coming years. So thank you.
Thank you for having us. This is
Thank
fun.
you.